Jennifer Doudna, has a simple way of explaining how it works.
I like to use the analogy of word processing because it's very analogous to that. You think of the DNA code like the text of a document. This is the scissors that allows you to cut out text, change it. The cell takes over after the DNA is broken and makes a precise change at the site of the repair.
Right, that is very basically it. It's like cut and paste in Microsoft Word. If there's something that you want to fix on a strand of DNA, with CRISPR, you could theoretically find it, cut it out, and paste in a fix, at which point, presumably, Clippy shows up and says, "Hi, it looks like you're trying to play God and alter the basic building blocks of life. Need some help?" Now, CRISPR's potential is huge. There are hopes that it might eventually be applied to more than 10,000 conditions, from sickle cell anemia to cystic fibrosis to some cases of early onset Alzheimer's. But gene editing is wildly difficult. Diseases typically have multiple genes that contribute to them, and human trials have been extremely rare, although there have been some promising results.
Just months ago, baby Layla was dying of acute lymphoblastic leukemia, so doctors agreed to try out an experimental immunocell therapy, which had never been used outside the lab. The result astounded her parents.
I took the gamble, and this is her today, standing, laughing, giggling, and I'm just thankful. It's a miracle.
That's fantastic. And he's right. It is a miracle. Except when you think about it, it's actually not. It's science, which I'd argue is actually better and more convenient than a miracle, because you don't have to spend the next 2,000 years worshipping the scientists. You can just be like, thanks. And while that is a truly amazing story, for the most part, applications of gene editing have been confined to experiments on plants and animals, where the results have been striking, if often a little weird.
Researchers at this lab used CRISPR to isolate and manipulate the beagle's muscle, or myostatin gene, making these the most muscular beagles in the world.
OK, all right. So you might think it's strange that scientists made jacked, sexy beagles, but did you ever even consider that the scientists were lady beagles? Change your preconceptions about what a scientist can be, hashtag beagle feminism, hashtag science bitches. And look, it's not just beefcake beagles. Scientists are researching ways to fight human diseases using mice, and while scientists know how painstakingly slow this kind of research is, it is tempting for the rest of us to start racing ahead and wildly speculating about where this is all going.
Could CRISPR give us unicorns?
So, we're getting creative now. So there are examples of animals that have single horns in the middle. So like the rhinoceros has one at its nose, but there are other ancient rhinoceros that have it in the middle of the head. So anyway, I think that you could get a single horn on a horse by looking at horns in other species.
So it's in the realm of possibility?
Yes.
OK, so I've got to say, judging by all the hedging he just did in that answer, even if we do one day create a unicorn, it's clearly not going to be this majestic creature who wants you to follow it into a magic waterfall. It'll be more like this, a monster that would beg, "Please kill me! End this madness now!" In fact, for a good sense of the mismatch between expectation and current capabilities, just look at a project that scientist is working on right now, bringing back the woolly mammoth. It has been hyped in headlines all over the world, but they are nowhere close to creating a living animal yet, and even computer simulations are underwhelming.
In the lab, they've edited about 35 functioning woolly mammoth genes into the Asian elephant genome. This is a good start for making a semi-woolly mammoth.
Yeah, that's not a woolly mammoth, though. That's just a wrong elephant. It's not so much Jurassic Park as an off-brand $3 petting zoo called Pet the Whatever. But if you watch the news, you may have noticed that you're not just seeing professional scientists, and that's because the underlying technology of CRISPR is so cheap and widely available, almost anyone can use it. So gene editing stories almost always feature a detour to meet biohackers like Josiah Zayner.
Here in the Bay Area, we're visiting a biohacker in his garage. He's selling CRISPR kits, DIY CRISPR kits, for a couple of $100s.
You can buy this cutting-edge kit that allows you to use this technology, and you don't need anything else. You don't need a PhD, and you could do experiments with CRISPR. Like, that, I think, is really cool.
OK, well, that sounds revolutionary, but to be fair, selling strangers things covered in unfamiliar DNA out of your garage already has a name, and it's every single garage sale in human history. Oh, I would like to buy your lamp, please, and then I'm going to take it home and wash it. And look, he's basically selling chemistry sets, and to the extent that they get people excited about science, that's a good thing. But you can see why scientists get frustrated when biohackers like Zaina hog all the media attention, especially because he makes some pretty wild statements like, I want to live in a world where people get drunk and instead of giving themselves tattoos, they're like, I'm drunk, I'm going to CRISPR myself, which is a terrible idea. Honestly, you shouldn't even get drunk and tattoo yourself, however cool Robert Duvall's face covering your midriff seems at the time. I'm just saying I have some regrets. Now, last October, Zaina even publicly injected himself with DNA that had been modified using CRISPR to try and give himself bigger muscles, which did not work. But in that same video, he argued that using CRISPR should ideally be like downloading an app.
You don't have to know what the app does, how to program it, how it works, anything like that. And I think that's the way it should be with genetic engineering and synthetic biology. Why can't people use this technology without necessarily completely knowing how it works?
I can answer that one for you. Because it could be dangerous and someone could get hurt. Also, I refuse to take scientific insight from someone shooting vertical footage on an iPhone. That is unforgivable. That is disqualifying immediately. And though Zaina now says he regrets that experiment, that kind of behaviour is a real worry for serious scientists. Not just that a biohacker will hurt themselves, but that doctors or scientists might rush a human application before it's ready, things go wrong, and the whole field is then set back years. That is exactly what happened to the field of gene therapy when a patient named Jesse Gelsinger died during a poorly designed trial. And that's not the only thing that scientists worry about, because the benefits and the drawbacks of gene editing can extend well beyond one person. And to understand why, it helps to be familiar with a key distinction.
Somatic cells are most of the cells in the body, blood, brain, skin cells, where the DNA doesn't get passed down to offspring. Germline edits involve sperm, eggs, or embryos, basically changing the DNA of future generations.
Exactly. Somatic cells die with you, germline cells get passed down through generations. So much of what you've seen so far tonight, like baby Layla or Zaina's muscle experiment, involved somatic cells, while germline cells are how my great-grandfather passed this nose down to me when he fucked this bird, great-grandma Feathers. She loved bells. Germline editing could potentially do incredible things. Take malaria. Nearly 500,000 people each year die from it, and it's spread by mosquitoes. But gene editing could help stop that through something called a gene drive.
Scientists do this by inserting an artificial gene into the DNA of mosquito embryos that will make an increasing proportion of female offspring sterile. The gene drive is embedded in the DNA to ensure the changes are inherited, unlike natural evolution, where chance is involved.
That's brilliant. And it's honestly much simpler than my idea to fight malaria by just fitting millions of mosquitoes with tiny condoms. But the moment you cross into germline editing, the ramifications can seriously increase, because messing with any ecosystem can have unintended consequences. This has always been true even before gene editing, and my favourite example of this comes from Australia, where about 100 cane toads were introduced in the 1930s to control the cane beetle. For the record, they didn't do that. What they did do was multiply to hundreds of millions of cane toads and wreak absolute havoc. Australians hate these things. There was even a documentary made about them, featuring a guy who made it his life's work to run over as many as he could.
Well, I line them up with the driver's side front wheel, but I seem to be able to get most of the ones I line up on the right-hand side of the road. Well, I really go out of my way to run over cane toads, basically because I have a very profound love of the wildlife that occurs here naturally. If it was possible to remove them and totally eradicate them from Australia, and I was capable of doing it, I would spend a lifetime doing exactly that.
Wow! That guy is in for an unpleasant surprise when he gets to the pearly gates and finds out that God is an Australian cane toad. Ah, so you'd like to get into heaven, huh? Why don't we go ahead and take a look at the tapes? The point is, Ecosystems are very delicate, which is why you need to be extremely careful. And a good example of someone taking that sort of care with gene editing can be seen in a project being considered on Nantucket Island as a way to fight Lyme disease. You see, Lyme disease is passed from ticks to humans, but before that can happen, it goes from mice to ticks. Now, typically, the way that works is like this. A mouse goes through a tough breakup. It was a relationship the mouse didn't want to end and leaves it seriously questioning its self-worth. The mouse goes on a series of rebound dates that only deepen the disillusionment. Could anyone love me, the mouse wonders. Despondent, the mouse turns to alcohol to numb the pain. While drunk, it comes across a Tinder profile of a tick. At first, the mouse is disgusted, but then it's actually intrigued. Oh God, it thinks, am I really going to fuck a tick? The mouse goes on the date thinking it's just a date, we're just talking, but the mouse is lying to itself because as soon as the tick says, maybe we should go someplace quiet where we can talk, bam, they're banging in the shower. And you know what? Afterwards, the mouse feels strangely satisfied. It feels desirable again. As for the tick, it can't wait to brag to its friends that it just fucked a mouse. And they both forget all about the encounter until 8 months later when the tick gets a call, bad news, you got Lyme disease. And that is how Lyme disease spreads from mice to ticks. Sometimes. Other times, the tick bites the mouse. Anyway, the point is, to prevent the spread of Lyme disease, a biologist named Kevin Esvelt is considering introducing genetically edited mice that cannot pass the disease to ticks. And he would do this with a ton of caution, testing it on an uninhabited island where the experiment will be contained, and it would only go forward on Nantucket if he got the buy-in of the local community. And even with all those safeguards, he's aware of the uncertainty.
Although Kevin Esvelt is confident his engineered mice will only reduce Lyme disease and not bring harm to Nantucket's ecosystem, he also knows that absolute certainty and genetic engineering do not go together.
I worry every day that I might be missing something profound about the consequences of what we're developing.
Good. I'm glad you do, because that is the kind of caution that you want from someone in his position. He clearly doesn't want to end up in a limerick that goes, there once was a man from Nantucket who gathered some mice in a bucket. He altered those mice, engineered with a splice, and now all of the seagulls are dead. And look, there aren't just practical considerations